Hey travelers, Mag and FlCrafters here, ready for another adventure on the trails of Hawaii, island of Oahu. This morning we're taking on the Wiliwilinui Ridge Trail. We're going to hike it all the way up to the top of the ridge line, and from there we're actually going to make a decision whether we hook back down for some additional geocaches just west of us, or if we go all the way to the top and follow the ridge line for caches. We're going to let the trail kind of decide that for us, but I can tell you, we are in for an adventure that's already a little bit different than I expected, because we have climbed all the way up here in our vehicle. My ears are ready to pop at any moment, so instead of having to climb all the way up to the top of the ridge trail, I think we're starting pretty well near the top.
Yes.
So hopefully this will be a mostly level terrain for us as we make our way along the ridgeline trail, and I can't wait to see what it has in store for us. Come on, let's go.
To reach the trailhead for the Wiliwilinui Ridge Trail, you must first pass through the community of Waileiki. At about the halfway point on our ascent through the community, we had to stop in at a guard station to pick up our pass for the parking area before we could begin our hike.
This is one of the best trail signs I've probably ever come across here. It shows us the elevation gain throughout the trail and has a pretty good elevation chart here off to each side of the ridge, showing us at our starting point here, moving up to the end of the trail. Now this is our decision point, actually close to about here. There's a series of geocaches that runs off this side to another ridge, or if we continue up to the end, there's geocaches that go off to the east and west as well. It's when we get here that we decide whether we're going to be branching off for those or following further up for the ones that run east and west. The trail's going to decide for us, but it's nice to know what we're getting into looking at the map here.
The trail map also made it perfectly clear that all we need to do was maintain a straight trajectory.
So far, so good. This trail does appear to be much easier than the satellite images would have you believe. I knew we were going to be following along that ridge, and we were both studying this. It looked pretty intense, right?
Yes, it did.
But here we are on a paved trail, and it seems like most of the elevation gain was done by the car, which, by the way, was screaming at us the whole way up. This is pretty decent. Hopefully it sticks like this, right?
Yes.
Of course, that illusion came to an end very quickly because the paved trail only lasts for about a quarter mile. From there, we find ourselves using a dirt road that was placed by the Hawaiian Electric Company in the late 1940s. It doesn't take too long before we find ourselves gallivanting off into the woods in pursuit of our first find.
Look at that. FlCrafters strikes again. As we got off the trail to navigate toward this one, she immediately spotted it on approach while I was still wandering around in the brush just over that way. That's why it's important to have an experienced geocacher with you. Thanks, FlCrafters.
Yay!
On the road in the US, I really didn't interact with trackables. I had too many things going on. But now that we're here in Oahu and we're focused on the islands, I can deal with them. So we have an entire bag full of trackables here. Don't ask how I got them, I don't want to talk about it. But we're gonna go ahead and leave one in this geocache right here. And as we progress along the trail, perhaps we'll get to leave some more of these, but as you can tell, there's a lot of trackables to drop right here. Can't wait.
Shortly after passing by the first set of telephone poles, we start to notice a lot of fruit on the ground.
One of the distinctive features of this trail is that it is lined by strawberry guava trees on the way up. The smell is aromatic in the air, and they are lining the trail. You can see the strawberry guavas all over. We don't actually see them on the trees, which means that we're probably out of season for that, but their presence is definitely noted. Whenever you find fruit on the ground, don't pick it up and put it in your mouth. Maybe from the tree if you know it's safe, never from the ground.
And that's a darn shame, because there's enough strawberry guavas lining both sides of the trails here to provide quite a feast. We do our best to ignore their delicious aromas, with our eyes set on the hill ahead of us.
And as you can see as we walk our way up, there are no lack of strawberry guava to tread upon. Every time we step on one of these and crush them, we get that sweet smell coming at us. Oh, it does smell pretty good though. But no, don't eat it.
Once we have passed through the heavily canopied area, the strawberry guavas on the side of the trail begin to thin out again. It is at this point we approach our waypoint that leads off to the second trail we're considering.
We are now only a few hundred feet from our decision point to continue along the ridgeline or head down onto the other finger. And as you can see right here, it kind of drops down. So if we're going to pursue those 6 caches just west of us, we're going to have to go all the way down to come all the way back up again.
Having been surrounded by trees for the entire first portion of the trail, it's a bit of a surprise when we break out and finally get to view the ridges we're climbing on. From here, it really looks like quite the hike.
There is the actual ridgeline we're looking for. Whether or not we make it there today is a whole different thing. But as you can see leading up there, all of these little ridges kind of do the same thing. They go up and up. And we were fortunate that our parking area started at the top of one of these ridges, so we didn't have to take that crazy climb to get up here. It's still an uphill hike, but knowing what the car did for us, I have no complaints whatsoever.
And even if I did, it wouldn't make much of a difference because I know the trail doesn't care if we have any gripes.
All it takes is stepping a few feet off the trail for it to turn into a major bushwhacking expedition. But I think the geocache is right there ahead of me. Let's dive in and check. Let's go. All right, just gonna get down on hands and knees for this. Crawl through all this shrubbery. See all those strawberry guavas down there. And, yep. Look at that. We have a geocache. And I actually managed to find this one, but only because I got here first. FlCrafters is right behind me.
By this point, I like to think that we're really starting to enjoy this hike on the trail. But then again, maybe that's just my imagination.
Our GPS both agree the geocache is right over there. Neither one of us quite wants to believe it, as there's nothing even resembling a trail. But it is what it is. This is the definite decision point we were looking at. We can see the trail is clearly marked. It has pink markings on the tree and pink ribbons. I'm gonna just head over the top here and see what it looks like on the other side.
And the answer to that question is not all that great. These pink ribbons definitely mark the branch trail, but it is not maintained like the main trail. If we take this one on, it's gonna be a whole other thing.
We have arrived at our ground zero. GPS is showing about 5 feet right here. And geosensors are pointing right over there. So we're gonna see if we can come up with a find. Bugs here. Look at that, easy day. And this part of the woods is filled with mosquitoes. As we bushwhack our way through these ferns, as soon as you stir it up like that, nice little clouds of mosquitoes pop up. So it's a good place to wave your hands around and try not to lose all your blood out here. We've looked at the options. We have to go down for the 6 geocaches that are there, which actually leads to a 2002 cache, which is rather appealing. But since the wind factor is not an issue today, at max it only gets up to 7 miles an hour, we're instead gonna hike all the way up to the top of the ridgeline and see what we can get up there. Because later on, when the wind's a little worse, I think we'll be able to head down there, but when the wind's bad, we will not want to go on that ridgeline.
With our decision made, we stick to the main trail, heading up toward the ridge and gaining elevation with each step.
The clouds over the ridgeline are lifting, which is a good sign, but we can see our trail from here and it is demotivating. If you look up at that tower there at the peak, you can actually see that dark brown line kind of zigzagging its way down from that. That's the trail we're aiming at. And if you really look near just above the top of that tree there, you can actually see a little teeny tiny white dot. That's a person hiking up there. And soon enough, that'll be 2 people hiking up there, me and FlCrafters.
It is a little bit of a hit and miss game, whether we find ourselves under the tree cover or exposed out on the top of the trail. While I always enjoy a hike in the woods, I find myself looking forward to the clear spaces to view the adjacent ridge lines. It's so interesting to me that even a straight trail like this can offer so much variety.
It's been fairly dry out here for the last week or so, which is probably the saving grace for us to take on this hike today. Because despite how dry it's been around Oahu, it is still quite wet and slick with mud, and there are spots where there's water pooled up along this trail. So had it actually been raining, this might not even be doable for us. But as it is, hiking our way up toward that ridge, we have to take each step carefully with our handy dandy hiking sticks to make sure that we stay on our feet and don't slip and fall face first in the mud, which is a very real risk even on these flatter parts of the trail here.
Just beyond this wet spot is the next geocache we're seeking, so we step off the trail and give it a search.
When I stepped back, I heard that thunk on my head, so I was like, metal.
Oh my goodness. That is an ammo can right there. Check that beast out. It may not be in the best condition. As you can see, it's pretty beat in here. It's, you know,
Looks like this is
it's seen better days.
Yeah.
There's a nice little peacock in this geocache. But hey, I don't really care if the contents are wet. That's a giant ammo can. I'm a happy cacher.
When we reach the base of the stairs, bracketed by warning signs, we realize that this trail is about to get a lot more intense.
As you can see, this is where the easy part of the trail comes to an abrupt end. It's about to get very real from here, and believe it or not, this is the little peak we're about to climb. Then we'll get a view of the big peak behind it. Wish us luck.
We had seen this trail meandering its way up the peak from a pretty long ways off, but from back there, we couldn't tell that it was comprised of stairs. That seems like a good thing to me though, providing firmer footing for our ascent.
The stairs are telling us everything we need to know. Some of these steps are pretty tall, and that is a factor caused by erosion, which we're gonna have to watch out for along the way.
A few of the steps seem to have eroded away, but for the most part, they're still doing their job just fine.
We'd actually referenced a hiking guide about this trail before coming out here to get an idea of what we're in for. But that book was straight up lying to us. It said that it was paved pretty much the whole way up to the top, and the paved part of the trail only lasted for a quarter mile, half mile tops. And shortly after that, it turned into what we're dealing with out here, which is much preferred. It's much more scenic. But the thing about hiking a ridgeline trail like this is you really need to stick to the trail, because if you step just a little bit off to one side or the other, it's a long way down.
The trail happens to be just wide enough to alleviate any concerns we have about a slip and fall.
We have now climbed far enough up along this ridge line that we have completely cleared out of the trees. There are a couple of low trees around us, like this boy right over here, but for the most part, it's all just scrubs and ferns from here on up. So we would be exposed a little bit more to the sun, but we are actually hiking directly into the clouds. So the sun isn't really beating down on us like it would without the tree cover otherwise. What that means though is we do get occasional sprinkles. They're just the clouds ringing out like sponges as they come over the top of these mountains. My expectation is that when we reach the top, when, not if, because we're gonna reach the top, then we'll have a view out to the other side of the island, and it's gonna make this whole climb well worthwhile. Right, FlCrafters?
Sure.
She'll think so too once we get there, I assure you.
A staircase like this is no laughing matter. It may look relatively simple, but trust me, you're gonna feel every step along the way. We are definitely getting our workout as we climb ever closer toward the top. And whenever we get a clear view back behind us, it's impressive to think about all the ground we've already covered.
A good spot to both bask in the sense of accomplishment and prepare for the rest of the trail ahead. From here, you have a pretty clear view of the trail we just took in. What you can see there along the ground on the ridge line, and it just follows past those power lines all the way down to that drop over there. It's a pretty long way, and comparatively speaking, with all we've done, it's really not that much farther for us to reach that tower up at the top of the ridge line, which is our goal marker. From there, that's where the geocaches start again, but from now, it's just more climbing. Times like these, there's a saying I like to remind myself of. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you take on a massive hike straight up like this? One step at a time. And fortunately, they gave us all of these steps to help actually make the climb. So kudos to the folks that came up here ahead of us, however long ago that was, and actually made this trail hikeable for people like us to ascend to the top. One bite at a time, one step at a time. And the goal is not too far off now. Tower's right up there, but it is a pretty steep climb between here and there, and we're gonna keep taking it one step at a time.
Admittedly, those steps do become a bit more complicated when we reach a section where the stairs have been washed out entirely.
The other thing that's particularly interesting about this trail, and actually many of the trails out here in Hawaii, is that there are many places you'll come along where people have hung ropes to help your climb. Now, whether or not you actually use this rope is a choice, because somebody else hung it, you don't know what it's attached to at the top, and you don't know how long it's been out here. But if it's really wet, slick, and muddy, this might be the best way to help you ascend a little bit higher to the top. But for now, with the conditions the way they are and being mostly dry, we're gonna leave this rope alone and still do this with the hiking sticks.
Right above the washed out section, I am surprised to find a ladder, as it is the only ladder that we come across anywhere out here on this trail today.
It is obvious to me that we are here at a good time. Right here embedded in the mud, you can see where the trail literally sucked the bottom right off of somebody's shoe here. So Yeah, it can probably get pretty muddy here, and today is very dry, so couldn't be happier with the conditions all the way up.
Our landmark is literally and figuratively towering above us now, just a little bit further to reach the top.
Whew, that was a heck of a climb to get up here. This is our milestone. We've reached the tower, and as far as I'm concerned, if we did have to turn around back from here, it's a victory. But now we have the geocaches heading out along the ridgeline that we want to try and pursue. But look at that view we have from here. Out over on that side is Sonoma Bay, which we hiked on a previous adventure. Down there, you can see the city of Waikiki spread out on another previous adventure, and one that I'm saving is going to be the Diamond Head crater over there. So we have a pretty good view from here, and I suspect right over the edge of the ridge, we're gonna have a good view on the other side too.
Before we move on, we sit and bask in our accomplishment while we drink some water and prepare for the last leg.
I gotta tell you, when we hiked up the trail on Sonoma Bay, it felt like we had gone a long way up. But looking at it from here, it's really not all that high of an elevation by comparison. This trail has it beat hands down, and yet somehow we're still climbing.
But not too much further at least, because the edge of the ridge is located just at the top of the hill in front of us now.
From here at the top of the ridge, there's no better indicator of how much difference the ridges make on the cloud cover through Oahu. On this side, you can see Waikiki out, and it's a fairly clear view. We have some cloud cover, but that's mostly because we're at the top of the ridge here. But looking out on the other side, which leads out toward Kaneohe Bay on the other side of the island, you can't see a darn thing out here. It is completely obscured by cloud cover and an extremely steep drop off the side there. So, based on this sign right here, we've reached the end of this trail, and we will definitely not be going that way.
Interestingly enough though, there are geocaches heading down the ridge to the east and west of our location. That really piques my interest because it doesn't look like there's much of a trail heading off in either direction.
From our spot here on top of the ridge, there's a geocache, only 500 feet over that way. But this trail is slick. Every step I can feel my feet wanting to slide out under me. And as you can see, it is very narrow there. It's been well over 2 years since the last find on that geocache, and it's easy to see why. One misstep could be your last step. So as much as I want to head out there and get this last geocache, I think we're going to pass on this one.
With the ridgeline connector trails off to either side looking a little too hazardous to traverse, we really have nowhere else to hike from here. We sit and enjoy the view, preparing ourselves for the long hike back down.
Success! We managed to hike all the way up to the top of the Wiliwilinui Trail. We found 4 geocaches along the way, ascended quite a ways, and we got a nice view of the clouds out over the other side of the ridgeline, not much else beyond there. We were hoping to go ahead and find the caches either going east or west along the ridgeline, but looking from the top, that looked treacherous.
Yeah, it's not even scary, it's not even the right word.
Yeah, it was terrifying more like. I walked out about 100 feet on one edge of the trail, felt all the mud slipping under my feet, and said, no, not for an extra smiley on the map. But as far as I'm concerned, mission accomplished. We made it up to the top where the man-made, maintained trail ends, and we have this fantastic view. I hope you guys have enjoyed this trip up to the top of the Wiliwilinui Trail, and I can't wait to share even more adventures on Oahu coming up with you in the near future. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, stay tuned for updates, and we'll see you out on the trails.